if you shuffle a deck of cards? Was that you guys? I didn't tell you this. Somebody sent me this. I'm going to work it into this course somehow. It's a fascinating, fascinating claim. If you take a deck of cards, 52 poker cards. No, take the jokers out if you want to. That makes shuffle it, and then deal it out in order from card 1 to card 52. Most likely, that shuffle has never ever happened in the history of cards. If you shuffle a deck of cards, well shuffled, and then deal it out, most likely, probabilistically speaking, that order has never happened ever before, and arguably will never happen again. That particular exact shuffle.
What's the percentage of it?
Well, I calculated it. It's like Age of the Universe huge. Like, that's what I started thinking, because somebody sent it to me on Instagram. They took a picture of it, sent it to me on Instagram, and said, I was an old 243 student. I don't believe this. And I said, I think I do. He's like, how could you believe that? That's such a wild claim. And then I was like, think about exponential growth, and think about super exponential growth. And
factorial is huge.
that number that Eric just quoted is something that we're all going to learn as we go through this course. It's called a factorial. Factorial growth is stupid huge. It's, you know what exponential growth is? 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is exponential growth. Exponential, or factorial growth is 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6. So it's super exponential. Yes, we're going to learn in this class. As part of this class, when we're getting closer to what Tom was talking about earlier, we want to bring the factorials in. I call it super counting. Being able to count large things. It's like Age of the Universe big. Like, Eric, you just calculated it. How many times 10 to the what?
Times 10 to the 67.
So try to process times 10. I asked in the last class, I said, how many shuffles do you think there are? Like, I don't know, 1 million, 1 billion, 1 trillion. 10 to the 67th power. Okay, 1 trillion is 10 to the 9th, right? Mm-hmm. Is that right? No, that's 1 billion. 1 trillion is 10 to the 12th. So 1 trillion is 10 to the 24th, which would also be called a sextillion. It's trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion. So, because I have trillion, that's easier to think about, right? Trillion is 10 to the 24th. 10 to the 36th is a trillion. It's a trillion to the 5th power. So imagine the national debt of the United States. Then imagine 1 trillion of those. Then imagine 1 trillion of those. And then imagine 1 trillion of those. And all of a sudden it's like, I can't even, exactly, my head hurts just thinking about that. And because your head hurts thinking about the size of that number, you have to begin to accept that maybe that claim holds some water, because there's so many possibilities. What's the chance that yours looks just like the one I just did? 1 in that. 1 in that, which is essentially 0. Which is essentially 0. Right?
So what about sometimes people throw out the claim that, like, you shuffle it more than a certain number of times and it starts to come back to
That is always based on empirical evidence. I love that claim. I've seen it a number of times. If you shuffle it, take a deck of cards brand new out of the box. Bicycle cards, they have them all in order, right? It goes like ace through king, hearts, diamonds. Shuffle them, and apparently there's a number. I forget what the number is, like 5 or 6 or 7. It's under 10. 7 shuffles, and you are basically back-ish to where you started. I've never seen the actual data on those claims, but I've heard that claim and seen it in so many different places. There's got to be a shred of truth in it somewhere. I just don't know where. I haven't analyzed it enough. And unfortunately, it's so messy for this course, we could spend 3 weeks just collecting data on that, which would be fun to do, except then I piss off the schools that you're transferring 243 to. Oh, we spent 3 weeks shuffling cards. Thanks, dude. Go ahead, Tom.
Even besides like human variation of shuffling, like you just, and not even 52 cards, right? It seems like you can take 20 cards, say 10 and 10.
And get a small
and
idea.
And get like every other and every
right.
other and every other. And
eventually the tongues they revert. It makes sense. But that's also assuming a perfect shuffle.
Right.
How many of us shuffle completely perfectly? I don't. I'm pretty poor at shuffle. Right, essentially 0. That's what we're getting down to, essentially 0. It might be off by only 1 card, but it's off, right? Like that's that thing you watch. There was a commercial for Powerball years ago. And Powerball, you pick 6 numbers, 5 numbers in a Powerball. And did we analyze this in 105? Every once in a while I do, sometimes I do. We did craps. Not Powerball. We'll do Powerball this term, just to mix it up a little bit. But anyway, there's a commercial for Powerball, and it shows a bunch of people at a party, and there's a TV on, and the commercial starts going, and we're reading the Powerball numbers, and the guy at the table, they're playing cards, and he's like, I got one of these cards. He pulls it out, and then they announce the number. He's like, I got 1 number, and his friends are like, whatever, you got a number. And then he's like, oh, I got 2. And then somebody's at the table's like, oh, really, you got 2? He's like, oh, I got 3. And then all of a sudden, people at the table come around, right, come around, and they're like, 4, 5, and then the commercial cuts. And I say, there's a much better chance he's not going to get that 6th number than he is going to get that 6th number. Because there's like 60 numbers possible for the last one. That means there's a 1 in 60 chance he's got all 6. Does nobody think that way? And then I realized, no, nobody thinks that way. They think, you've seen the billboard on 97? Somebody just won $934,000 at Canida. Will you be next? Probably not. I mean, you probably won't. I want to spray paint that up on top of that billboard. Statistically, no. You won't be next. I mean, the numbers are not with you, my friend. It's not like the friggin' Force. This is not like the Jedi's in the Force. The numbers are not with you. You're most likely going to be off. Eric, what are you calculating right there?
How many? I just picked a number like 10 million.
Yes.
Say